Доброго дня, це медіа-центр.
Good afternoon, this is Media Center. Ukraine, Odessa, we have only one briefing today, but it is very important since it's dedicated to a one-year anniversary of the open and the full-scale invasion of Russia, when Russia attacked Ukraine in different areas, not masking and using its proxies as it used to be before that attack. Today we have representatives of those strata of society that have been affected the most during the full-scale war. Namely, Oleksandr Ostapenko, veteran of the Armed Forces of Ukraine; Karina Efremova, IDP from Kramatorsk, organizer of cultural events now in Odessa; and Kateryna Nozhevnikova, volunteer, founder of the charitable foundation Corporatsia Monstriv, Monsters Corporation. She's online with us. Let's start from Oleksandr. Please share how have you changed during the big war, what you did on the 24th of February. On the 24th of February 2022 will be the Black Day in the history of Ukraine, but at the same time, it is the day of end of the Russian Empire. That day changed me a lot. Before the 24th of February, I used to be a representative of the Ombudsman on Human Rights of Ukraine at the Parliament, at the Ukrainian Parliament. But on the 24th of February, I went to the military commissariat to join the armed forces of Ukraine and to defend our homeland. The war has changed everything, especially the last year of the war of the full-scale invasion. And I can say that there are changes in the armed forces of Ukraine, what I experienced myself from the first day of partisan war to repel the Russian convoys invading our country, to the high maneuver combat activities to liberate our citizen towns in Kyiv, Kharkiv, and Kherson oblasts, and as well as the positioned defense, which helps to create conditions for our new offensive. I think there are three important issues and components that we should take into consideration. The first one is our people and the servicemen that wanted to protect their homeland and their families. They were more motivated than the occupiers. The second element, logistics and weaponry. Now we are facing the key changes in terms of equipping of our armed forces, giving us hope that we will win and that we will liberate all the territories. And the third element, these highly developed organizational skills of our military, of our staffs to organize activities on the front line. There is still a lot of issues, but these three factors will make us victorious in the future. The people have changed. I felt this in Odessa Oblast at the beginning of the full-scale war, then in Kherson and Zaporizhia Oblast, where I was involved directly in hostilities. At first, people were lost, but then they united to achieve victory. There is a dramatical surge in our Ukrainian identity. People are now feel responsible for defending their homeland, their families, etc. Now we have what we lacked before. This is the understanding of the independence and sovereignty of our state. And this is now a massive comprehension, not by some individual activists as it used before, but now it is understood by the whole people. We should also speak about mass volunteer movement that felt boost at the beginning of the full-scale war. And at first we had only cell phones and rifles. But then we already got the Motorola radio stations, 15 Starlinks, and around 24 heavy-duty trucks, modern weaponry, including Italian and American. So we can speak about dramatical changes that also made us believe that we will be able to win. When it comes to the prospects of the war, where I'm sure in our victory, and today Ukraine has an incredible chance to become a substantive player at the international arena and to significantly improve its defense and also to modernize our people, our country after the war. Thank you. Later, we will have a Q&A sessions, and you've mentioned volunteer, and now I would like to give floor to volunteer, which is well known not only in Odessa but in Ukraine. Kateryna, how has the attitude of people changed to volunteers, and what did your foundation do during the year? I don't think that the attitude has changed. But I think that when it comes to the number of people supporting the army or IDPs, that number is fantastic. And I believe that this is a phenomenon, and I'm not that optimistic as our previous speaker, but I would like to say that this volunteer phenomenon will be started later on, because now we have a great number of people supporting the armed forces of Ukraine, IDPs, and those persons who found themselves in difficult situations because of the full-scale invasion. A lot of people now believe that the meaning of their life is to do something to support the country to fight the aggression. As for our foundation, at the beginning of the war, I did not think that we would support army, because before that we used to support children, hospitals, elderly people, and I thought that we would continue our work. But on the second or on the third day since the start of the full-scale war, I received a first request from a military unit. At that moment, I understood that if we did not support army now, at that moment, there would be no need in this support in the future. And around the second day, we started supporting the armed forces of Ukraine, and now 90% of our activities are related to this support. Thank you, Kateryna. Now, I would like to give floor to Karina Efremova, who came to Odessa from Kramatorsk. Can you please share your story? I do remember the date when we came to Odessa. That was the 17th of March of the last year. But actually, we didn't want to come here, because in Kramatorsk, in my home city, I was known as the cultural journalist and cultural activist. My husband and I organized different events, cultural events in the region. We recorded podcasts about regional culture, and we supported cultural initiatives. On the eve of the 24th of February, we had an event in Kramatorsk, in Slovyansk, and then we came back home, and our friend told us about the war that was there ahead of us. But we didn't believe him. We laughed because we had some plans for the 24th of February. That's why on the 24th of February, when we woke up, we couldn't believe what was happening, and we still believed that the event that we planned for the evening would take place. And till the last moment, we believed that we could stay in Kramatorsk. And we had no plans of changing our lives, and we never expected that we had to survive and we had to flee. But then the missile hit the house near us, and my mom spent 2 nights in the basement. And we were so scared that we decided to leave our city. We went to the central part of Ukraine first, but we were lost because we didn't know what we should do. And our plan was a short-term one, because we decided to come to Odessa, to stay there for several days, and to decide what we should do next. But actually, with our thoughts, we were still there in Kramatorsk. At some point, we felt that actually we need to think about our jobs to earn money. And perhaps we were lucky because that was summer in Odessa, and the first restaurants, cafes, and outlets, establishments started to open in Odessa. And of course, that was a risk, because maybe that was not the right time for entertainment. But we took that risk. And so we organized events for people to be distracted from the news and to have some rest. And later on, we would learn about significant competitiveness in Odessa. Then we would start using Ukrainian language for our events. But when we only started our activities there, we just did what we could, and that was our job to do. Soon it will be 1 year since we've moved to Odessa, and I'm thankful to the city, to volunteers and kind people who supported us at the very beginning. They just rented the flat for us, to us for nothing. We could say that perhaps we were lucky, but I would disagree with you, because there were so many cases when we were supported by kind people, and Odessa gave us so many opportunities that I don't believe that this is just a coincidence. This is the unity of our people. I believe in this because I can see this every day. Thank you. And now let's start our questions. The first question is to Oleksandr. Karina has mentioned that they did what they could. And this reminds me of the Ukrainian army, when during the first days of the full-scale invasion, a lot of people just came to the military commissariats and they were ready to do what they could in the armed forces of Ukraine. I knew that you actually served in the army before that. And was it difficult for you to remember all your skills or your knowledge, and was it really problematic for people who had no military experience but joined the armed forces of Ukraine? Yes, that was a problem, and there is still this issue. Now I can say that during the first days of creation of our tactic group, and I can laugh actually in saying this now, but that group was called Uber Group, like the taxi app. because actually we used just motor cars, and the members of our team were just businessmen from Ukraine, the people who were not actually ready to serve, because they served in the army a long time ago and they didn't remember anything. And there was no time for quality training of these people. During the first day, there was no opportunity to train people as they are trained now. And I can speak about my fellow servicemen who continue service training now, including in European countries, in Poland, Switzerland, Sweden, Spain, and they can learn and master new types of weaponry, etc. So this is a completely different level of training now. As for our training during the first day, it was like training on the spot. When we got to Kherson Oblast, we started training the people who were there how to use weapons. And actually, we were lucky because we were in the second echelon, so we could train our people. Because actually, without proper skills and knowledge, the person has no assurance in being successful in hostilities. Then we were sent to Zaporizhia, and the situation was much more severe there than in Kherson Oblast. People were ready, people were trained, and they were ready not only to defend themselves on the front line, but they were ready to offend, to go on further, because a lot of them told me that they did not want to defend themselves, but they want to attack. And that is the transformation of the mentality of our people, including our military, because our military is mostly comprised of civilians who had no military experience before the war. And that's why psychological and physical training are very important, and we need to solve this issue at the highest possible level. We were supported, massively supported by volunteers. Of course, we were able to get weapons thanks to my contacts with former military. But volunteers provided us with modern items that increased our efficiency. The Monstriv Corporation, for example, gave us several UAVs, which increased our efficiency significantly when it comes, for example, to attacking our enemy. A lot of volunteer organizations in Odessa Oblast, Vinnytsia and Vinnytsia Oblast supported us. And those people were not professional, so to say, volunteers. They were just local communities that collected money to buy radio stations, vehicles, and other equipment. I can agree with Karina that we're now speaking about unity of Ukrainian people, because Ukrainians were not lost facing this significant threat. They united and started working to achieve our mutual victory. I'm optimistic. I'm always optimistic. I believe in the bright future of our country. I'm sure in it. Kateryna. Oleksandr and you have already mentioned this, and this is the common question we ask from our volunteers. So what were the needs of Ukrainian military during the first days, how the situation has changed, what you have supplied? And I would like to thank now Oleksandr, and through Oleksandr all our servicemen, what they do for us, because I believe that we must support them. But because they are there on the front line, and this is really terrifying. And every day I thank Oleksandr and people like Oleksandr who left their families, left their usual lives to join the armed forces of Ukraine to defend our country. This is a real heroism. We could never think actually that we would live in times of war, but this is a real heroism to go there to join army knowing that every day you could be killed. And I would like to thank our servicemen. As for the equipment that we supplied, as for our aid, this is a very difficult for me, and I think that this is a difficult question for all Ukrainians, for all foundations, because unfortunately there was nothing there. The army had nothing, because during the first days and months of the full-scale invasion, we were really surprised by requests, because our servicemen needed everything, literally everything. And I understand that the needs were so significant because our army increased significantly. For example, one unit could have around 70 people, but then after the full-scale invasion, that number increased to 300 people, and those people needed everything: mattresses, pillows, and other stuff. And we needed to provide the things to the military. We received, for example, requests to supply nails, and it is now like an anecdote in our foundation. That was the huge, the long list of the people, of the needs, and people needed helmets, vests, clothes, food products, weapons. And the amount of items on the list was more than 4,000 pieces. A year has passed since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, but the requests are still there because the new brigades are now formed, and they also need supplies. But I believe that this is not okay when a serviceman comes to a charity foundation asking to buy an excavator to dig trenches to protect tanks that we receive from our Western partners. And here I would like to thank them for these weapons. We have decided now that we are going to cover three areas in the future, namely UAVs, which are eyes and ears of our servicemen, and they can't do without drones now. And we need to understand this, but unfortunately now some public authorities still don't understand this, those responsible for supplying drones. And we volunteers, some ordinary people, relatives of servicemen, try to supply as many UAVs as possible, because the modern war is impossible without drones. Everyone uses drones now on the front line. There is a sad but honored mission of collecting bodies of our deceased servicemen. Even for this, our military needs drones to find the bodies of our fallen heroes. And still, we are facing challenges created by our state. when it comes to supply drones from abroad, despite the fact that our enemy does everything possible to have as many UAVs as they can. And it is a sad story that we still continue to buy such items. Of course, at the beginning of the full-scale war, it was very difficult for the state to organize the process. But it's been a year since the beginning of the full-scale war. And our servicemen should not be involved in looking for weapons for them. As well as snipers, for example, should not look for rifles. We have now some technical issues, and I hope Kateryna will join us soon. And I would also like to add a few words. And yes, there is now a significant problem, including in the armed forces of Ukraine. For example, this is due to the fact that there are no drones or Starlinks in many battalions in Ukraine. And yes, we should speak about the quick response of the armed forces of Ukraine to ensure public procurement of such items. And we need to change staff of our battalions and units fighting there. And I would like to say that the problem of the expert of drones was described in the article of Maria Berlinska issued yesterday. Kateryna, can you hear us? We did not stop the broadcast. Yes, unfortunately, someone called me. Yes, this is a really huge problem, huge issue. And they say to us that the issue has been already dealt, but we face this all the time. And I believe that we should not have such obstacles in a year after the start of the full-scale invasion. So what our servicemen need the most now? UAVs, tactical medicine, which is also a significant problem because now, a year after the start of the full-scale invasion, we got requests for such items, and relatives of our servicemen are still looking for tactical medicine. We still can find Chinese tourniquets which are supplied to our servicemen, but this should not be like that. But we have the situation that we have. This third element is communication. Without proper communication, servicemen cannot be fully efficient on the front line or in the second echelon. And that's why we buy the equipment they need for them. And we have the number of such requests is increasing. And I would like to thank all the people who support us. You understand that the numbers are huge. For example, in 2022, during the first 10 months of the full-scale invasion, aided the armed forces of Ukraine to the amount of around 200 million hryvnias. And these are huge amounts, but this money were donated by ordinary Ukrainians staying here in Ukraine or abroad. But this is like a small part of money which are raised every day, because we have two huge foundations in Ukraine that collect billions, and there are several other foundations like our Odessa Foundation that collect hundreds of millions, and we don't see the light in the end of tunnel, because every day we have new requests from our military, which cannot fulfill their tasks properly without the equipment that they need. There is now a statement that our servicemen earn enough that they can buy everything for themselves. I hate this, but somehow this narration is promoted in the society. I don't know what is the aim of this, but everyone should understand. And now we are facing the problem that the law was adopted, canceling the bonuses for some of the servicemen. Yes, some can say, why should the state pay our military in the rear? But we have a lot of servicemen which are not on the front line, but they have frequent missions on the front line. I believe that every serviceman now, regardless of their whereabouts, should be properly equipped, because we don't know where they can be sent the next day. And the state, instead of supporting these people, instead of creating ideal conditions for these people, creates additional obstacles for us. And I can talk endlessly about this, and maybe this is not the information that you want to learn on the one-year anniversary of the war. But still, we have a lot of problems in the hospitals, in the other institutions, because people have just literally stayed there and wait there. And now we, and by we I mean volunteers and charity foundations, which are substituting the state in fulfilling its duties. And we still have a lot of problems which we try to solve. But we cannot support all those people from whom we now depend on, our military, because they still have to wait until they are waiting, for example, for UAVs, till they are waiting for us to be able to transport UAVs from abroad across our border. Because now, for example, we have been waiting for 2 weeks to bring drones, to have the possibility to bring drones in our country. And while servicemen are waiting, they are dying. This is the current situation. Thank you very much, Kateryna, for sharing this information. It would be difficult now to switch to another topic. But now I would like to ask Karina. A lot of people, a lot of Ukrainians moved abroad if they had such an opportunity. Do you have a lot of such friends? Are you still in contact with them? So, what is the situation there? Do you mean those who are staying abroad now? Yes. Thank you for the question. For example, my mother is one of those who went abroad. And it's quite interesting because she stayed in the UK for several months, but then she came back because she felt bad. She came back to Kramatorsk, and she saw that Kramatorsk became a ghost city. only servicemen live there now, and not so many civilians. The life is paused there, and it is very difficult to be there if you're an ordinary civilian. My mother could not stand that, and then she returned to the UK. And of course, we are in contact with her almost every day. There is video conference. We have such opportunity. I think it is most difficult for those people who could not find work there, because of course employment allows you to earn money, but it also distracts you. My mother found a job there. She is a hairdresser, and actually it helps her a lot that she speaks English. But I think that there are not so many cases like my mother's. I know that for people it is very difficult to stay there, because they cannot find some job there. There are different obstacles. For example, their knowledge is not enough. The reasons are different. And of course, when I'm listening to volunteers or servicemen, I believe that my needs are not that significant. And I can say that for materials needs, you can actually solve these issues by yourself. If you're an adult, if you are healthy and sound. But there is one more need, the need in communication with our loved ones and near ones, because a lot of families are now disseminated around, dispersed around the world, and it is very painful. We need to stop here. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here with us. And I believe that many journalists might be interested in our guests, and we are more than happy to share contacts of our guests with you, for you to show the stories of Ukrainians 1 year after the full-scale invasion. This is our first and last briefing for today. We'll see you next week, and we would like to thank both our servicemen, volunteers, and people in our government who try to improve the situation in terms of supplying to our military with everything they need. I would like to thank everyone for being alive, for staying here in Odessa, and we hope for our future victory. Please stay tuned.